Ben Startzer is my new partner. We're building a website together. He's head coach at Northfield High School in Denver, Colorado. We're going to create a head coaches certification that we're going to release, we hope, by June 1st. It'll be where a veteran coach would want to do the certification or someone who wants to be a head coach, but it's going to have storms in it. That's the reason for this podcast is we want to start talking about storms. Ben, if you would introduce yourself, give us the 30,000 foot aerial shot of you and your career.
Thanks, Randy. I'm going into my 32nd year, gentlemen. I'm in Denver, Colorado. I started my coaching career 30 plus years ago. I was in the Marine Corps, and we had a little team that would do inter squad scrimmages with local JUCOs and then play some games on the base. Long story short, it became quite apparent that I wasn't one of the better players on the team. After a couple years, we got pretty good and some guys moved in, and the lieutenant who had the team told me, "You should think about coaching." That was his hint for me to go coach instead of play. I started that process. 30 years later, I did 5, 6, almost 7 years in college ball Division II. As Randy mentioned, I'm always scouring the internet for what can give me an edge. Randy Jackson was one of those around COVID time and learning about fast and wide. As I hired coaches, it became very difficult where I'm at to hire coaches. I have a staff of, we're going to be 18 strong next year, but I'm the only guy in the building. So all of my coaches are professionals that live outside of the school building. I do it all on campus. They fill in when they get to practice. As I bring people on, it became even more and more apparent. A lot of guys have aspirations to be head coaches. They want to coordinate. As Randy and I were talking about our head coaching journey, storms kept popping up. And I thought there's some magic to a head football coach. You can go everywhere and find X's and O's. There's a big piece of magic in the people side of this because most of the storms come down to people. There's definitely some operational stuff, some institutional stuff, and we've started to flesh those things out. I'm going into my 11th year as a head coach. I spent a lot of years in the military and teaching as an assistant. You see the storms differently as an assistant than as a head coach when you finally get in the big chair. I remember one with a very successful coach here in Colorado. We had a running back that wasn't showing up very often, but he was so talented. We would get him into the lineup. I would say to this head coach multiple times, why don't we just cut him? We were the number one team in the state, highest scoring team in the state. Let's set a precedent. Let's just cut him. And it was easy for me as an assistant just to say, let's do that. And then when I got into the big chair, as Randy and I call it, you become a head coach, decisions take on a whole different magnitude. And you start thinking from different threads. That's kind of what this all came about was look at these storms and what I do now as a head coach to eliminate storms in August. When I was a first year head coach, they were hitting me left and right like that, where you walk into a meeting and maybe didn't know what was coming. 31 years, done college and high school, love the job. I have a tech background in some of the years where I was coaching outside of a building, but this fuels me. I love doing this stuff.
Thanks, buddy. And the way you said that, I think, okay, really what a head coach is, I'm thinking about the show Deadliest Catch. I haven't watched it in years, but I know y'all can all visualize this. The captain is sitting in that chair and waves are hitting and the crabs are flying everywhere and the captain is in that chair and that's what a head coach is. And it's an awesome job, but you better be able to handle the storms. We're going to start with one of mine. The rest are Ben's. But 10 days ago, one of my college teammates in Louisiana, I played at the ULM. One of my good friends in college, his son is a coach. And he wanted to know if I would call him and mentor him. I called him, and then he called me back about 10 days ago and said, "Hey, coach, here's what happened. I just want to know your opinion. A team that we're moving up, a team that's going to be in our district, asked me to send a resume. And guys, it is an affluent school, like it's a good job. It's way better than the job he has. He said, so I sent a resume, but I haven't interviewed. I thought he was going to ask me, do I tell my head coach that I sent a resume? And he said, I told my head coach, and he's not happy. He didn't handle it very well. And then the next day, he told me he's rethinking what my responsibilities should be. I thought, wow, that's a storm. That's one I put out online, and most people said they would help him. We got a bunch of different answers. Let's talk about that one. Ben, what would be your response if your defensive coordinator came to you and said, hey, this other school's asked me to send a resume? How would you handle that?
When I hear these stories and I hear these storms, the first thing I think about are my systems in place, or have I had enough conversations to maybe ward off that storm? But if I was hit like that, it all starts maybe with self-reflection to think, are my systems in place? Number one. Number two, are we in a position? What's our relationship like? After I get through that relationship piece, my next question is, can I lose this person in our situation? I go back to my military background, and my first thoughts are, okay, observe the situation, orient myself. Where am I? Is the relationship right? Am I doing something that would make him want to leave? If the relationship is good enough, I feel pretty good with my guys. It would surprise me. I would also then just ask a bunch of questions. I'm a helper by nature, so I think I would try and help that way. I would hate to see them go interdistrict or someone that's inside my own conference. That would be a killer because you got collateral damage between them knowing your systems and everything they can share. But really, my first thought is orientation. I'm starting to observe my situation and what can I do about it going forward. So I'm a helpful person by nature. I know it doesn't always come off that way inside of staff. I would hope that our systems are strong enough to take it. So that's where
Yeah.
I start planning kid wise. I don't really expect it, but I probably should do more of that where I start thinking in April and May, what if, and this happened to me last year, what happens if I lose my best player the week before the first game? That happened to me last year. And we struggled through that because we did not plan for that. And it was self-inflicted. We hurt our own guy in practice. And so it was one of those things where, gosh, our system isn't sound there and there. But that's a long way to kind of talk about, do you have a system in place? Can you orient yourself to the
Yeah.
battleground? And then how are you going to go through that? And I think it's a healthy exercise. We'd say that two of our players are going to disappoint us, and two of our players are going to surprise us come fall. And so we're always kind of planning for what if that person comes back and is not ready. I think this falls in the same bucket. What if you lost your coordinator
Yeah.
months before a season starts?
I got two thoughts on this. One is subjective and one's objective, but here's what I always thought. If I will just want what's best for my assistants, God will send me a great replacement. If my heart is right and want what's best for them. Now, DC, different true story. This is a young coach who's a DC, and this would be for a linebacker job. It's not even lateral, but the school itself is tremendous. It's a way better job. The linebacker job's a way better job. But this one time when I was looking for a defensive coordinator, a friend of mine was at a 6A school. I was at a 5A, and they ran a 3-4, and this is 2011. They were on the cutting edge of the 3-4 stuff then. And I said, Joe, do you have anybody on your defensive staff who would make a good defensive coordinator? And without hesitating, he said they all would. And I said, what do you mean they all would? I didn't believe him. And he said, Randy, we're training all of our guys to be DCs. He said, before we start spring ball, they're all going to get up and they can regurgitate what we're doing on defense. Everybody on my defensive staff knows the scheme. He said, my DC is really good, but I've got a DB coach who's really good. He said, I'm telling you, you could have any of them. And I ended up hiring the DB coach, who's now the athletic director at Mesquite ISD. I'll never forget that, him saying they all could be. It's because they meet quite a bit. They all had to know the defense. You couldn't just know the secondary. We've all had that D line coach who's really good at not letting his guys get reached, but he hadn't any idea what's going on behind them. Well, that's not how this guy operated. So, my first thought is you got to look in the mirror as a head coach and ask yourself, are you making your guys learn the scheme where you should have a plan B? There should be somebody on your staff who can take over. Anybody else before we go to the next one?
I agree with that statement that you just made. As a head coach, my attempt was to always empower our coordinators to make sure that I was empowering them and attempting to help them become the best head coach they could be if that's the next move they wanted to make. So I felt like that was my job. And their job is to make sure that if they left, I had someone on staff that I could say, hey, you got it. And we're not missing a beat. But I think that if you don't have that in place, that's whenever you begin to, you starting over from zero. I think if you get that mindset within the room with your coordinators, as well as have that mindset with yourself. Heck, I told a superintendent one time, hey, I'm just letting you know that I'm not looking, but if for whatever reason something pops open, the next head coach, if you want to stay with what we're doing, is on staff. I just truly believe that. And I think that that's the way that you get the program, the dynasties that begin to formulate. That's how it happens.
And again, the head coach is in charge of that. That's a great point, Tristan. Metter's got something here in the chat. If you're the DC and want to leave, are you honest with the head coach? That's a great point. So here's what I asked this young kid. Hey, I thought you were going to ask me if you should tell him. And here's what I was going to tell you. If he's a good guy, then I think you tell him if you're going to interview. And this might sound y'all a little wishy-washy, but if you're not sure if he's a good guy, then you don't tell him. Let me retract. You don't tell him when you send a resume if he's not a good guy. Now, you tell him before the interview. I don't think you should ever go interview without telling him. But if he's a good guy, you tell him when you send the resume. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Randy, you hit it right on the money, and it reminds me of Stephen Covey's Speed of Trust. If you trust that individual, then you're insulated by the fact that you can share that information. In those instances where there's no trust, obviously it slows everything down. I think your point's right on the money. Tristan's comment too is, I think you shared it, and that's that there should be somebody on your staff that can take over. That's a good measure for a program. Right now, you could say, I lost my linebacker coach, my varsity linebacker coach. Do I have a guy right now that can take over? And if that's not a yes, in many cases, it may not be. You don't have to build a 12-page plan for that, but it would be a to-do on my list to make sure I've got some reserves in case that storm hits.
If you're a head coach, if you've been at your school more than 2 years and you don't have another defensive coordinator in waiting on your staff, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but you have not done a good job of making that happen because we're all going to be lazy by nature, but you can't just let your staff do like the DC. If the DC leaves, you need to have another one ready to go. Maybe you don't have one that you like that much, but there should be someone who knows the scheme. We're not building submarines here. You just can't be the D line coach and not know what's going on behind you. Let me just say this. Here's what I used to tell my coaches every July when we met. You can look at my resume, and I've moved a bunch because that's the only way in our profession you can get a pay raise or better yourself. You can go 10 and 0 3 years in a row, and the school board may not give you a raise. So I've moved a bunch. I'm not going to be mad. I want what's best for everyone here. God will send me somebody else. Here's what I ask of you. Talk to me and tell me. Don't let the head coach down the road call me and I didn't know anything about it. Because if you'll tell me, I will call him and help you. I promise. And I think that's a conversation you should have in July. If your heart means it, I really do think God will send somebody else. I mean, it's not impossible. But I think if your assistants know you want what's best for them, man, they'll bleed for you now. And This where this young kid is now. I hope he doesn't have to stay because he knows his head coach doesn't have his best interest at heart. He's bringing all his chickens in and he's worried about the program.
Yeah, when I started thinking about storm, I've got a list of 50 of these things, but I was trying to sort them down. I'm like, which 10 could get me in hot water? And everybody's different. Maybe you're into your program a year or two, maybe you're already in there 10 years, and then you can kind of fight some of those things. But as I was leaving school today, I came across a kid that reminded me of as we're going into summer workouts, getting everything ready for these kids to jump in. 3 or 4 years ago, we lost a big D tackle, a really talented Division I type kid, lots of speed. One of those kids you just don't find very often. He missed all of summer. We planned around it. The second week of school, the first week of our regular season, a girl walks into my office and it happens to be his girlfriend. And she says, I'm kind of advocating for my boyfriend. He wants to play. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's been gone the whole time. And the storm in all this is we ended up welcoming him back and he's making it, but he's so talented. He's like an immediate starter type guy. But the trust is kind of not there with the team. We go out in the first game. He didn't get to play, didn't have enough practices, and we lost a nail biter in the opening to open the season. And this kid goes on a tirade and launches into the team post game, right? And he's talking about you got to have commitment, right? We got to play better than this. And I just remember the faces on my team kind of looking at me thinking, Coach, what? And I have guilt kind of going, yeah, I don't even know if he should be in this huddle right now. And yeah, it kind of hit us in the face. It took a long time for that team struggled out of the gate because it was like the trust, there was zero trust out of the gate. There was very little sense of surety amongst the team on where they stood. Mistake on my part, but I'll throw it out there. And so you're standing post game, parents are disappointed, sitting at the fence, waiting for you to come forward. And this kid's just unloading on your guys.
Do you mind if we backtrack a little? Because
Yeah.
here's a storm I think everyone listening to this will face. A kid doesn't show up all summer and wants to come out and play in the fall. And in Texas, we have spring ball. He doesn't go through spring ball. What do you do with the kid who doesn't show up all summer but wants to play?
JV.
JV.
If he's a senior, he doesn't play. That's our school policy, and my athletic director backs me on it. If they don't go through spring ball, that's one of the prerequisites to play, unless they move in. That's
Yeah.
different. They're just being lazy. He's a junior, and JV for us is 10th graders. I have a 9th grade team, a 10th grade team, and the varsity's 11th and 12th. So I can have an 11th grader on JV. If he's not going to come in the summer, then he's not going to be on varsity.
What if Jason negotiated every year? Every year, a large school is going to have more than one. If you don't have some kind of rule, you better be ready to be Judge Wapner and start holding court because they're coming. The first day of school, they're going to show up and go, oh, hey, where's my pads? Coach Metter.
So when I was at a small school, this is what we did. I also think it determines how long you've been out of school. What we would do is we would suspend a kid for 3 games. If a kid was willing to sit on the sidelines and watch for 3 games, that was worth it. I do think if you're at a bigger school, I think you can get away with it by not doing it. If you have a small school with 20 kids and you're early on in your career, I don't think it's worth losing one of your best players. Now, if he's bad in the classroom, I think that does change. Is that kid a good kid? We had several kids that came from basketball, the last school I was at, and was really good players for us, but we suspended them the first 3 games. So it's one of those things, how committed is he?
Yeah, I like it. All right, so let's go to Ben's. Ben's storm is really dicey. Ben's storm's one I haven't had, but how great is that? A kid who didn't show up and he's roasting everybody on their commitment. Ben, for me, I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to do about it, other than, I guess, tell the parents I'll handle this. Tell us, Ben, how did you handle it?
What I tried to do was subtly reinforce everything I had shared with the guys in the summer without hurting the dignity of the kid right there.
Yeah.
You lose a nail biter. It's not the defining moment in your season, but let's pull back to what matters. And that's the work that you put in and kind of reaffirming for them that I still believe in what they got. And I'll handle that on the side. Metter's point is right on the money where you're pulling out, is he a good kid? How is he in the classroom? This is where the art of head coaching comes out because there's no playbook for that, right? They didn't teach us that. You can go to Glazier clinics all day and learn how to run inside zone 47 different ways. But when someone walks in to your parent meeting, you didn't expect them there. You got to be on your toes quick. I think Tristan's point, sometimes the competitors in us rise to the top where we're like, okay, let's take this on. Let's do it. It was a reaffirmation back to the players that were there. And then sitting with our squad leaders and reviewing that away from the emotion of the game and trying to squelch that at the moment.
I got a scenario. We lose in the second round to Alito, who's won like 10 out of the last 12 state championships. We played at the old Texas Rangers ballpark. Season's over, losing the second round. Monday, we're at school, and Tommy's not there. Tommy's a backup, he's a junior. And Tuesday, Tommy's not there. Wednesday, Tommy's not there. One of the kids tells me Tommy quit. No, Tommy hurt his knee real bad in the game, which Tommy didn't play in the game, I don't think. And if he would have been, it would have been tackle on kickoff return. Tommy disappears. That was a COVID year. So it was December. But Tommy shows up again. We have a football period. First period, Tommy is gone. Tommy shows up the day before spring practice starts and wants his pads. And he said he had to have knee surgery, and that's why he's been gone. Now, we all know that is a crock of, you know what? Are you kidding me? I mean, is there a hidden camera over here? Is this what would you do on ABC or something? And so we have a parent meeting, and it did not go well. This could be another storm, but let's backtrack. I still screwed this up, y'all. All your storms come back to communication. When the season's over with, you're mad the season's over, but you're also exhaling. Remember when I said, where's Tommy? And finally they said he quit? I didn't reach out to anybody. I should have said, would you please reach out to Tommy's parents and let's verify what's going on? And I didn't. I'm just like, whatever, which is terrible. Tommy wasn't that committed anyway. A lot of these storms, y'all, you're going to be able to look back and go, oh man, I just should have communicated. Most of us don't like to pick up the phone and call a parent. We want to send an email. Someone should have called the mom and dad and said, hey, what's the story with Tommy? We've heard he quit. Does that make sense? So, yeah, I think a lot of these we're going to talk about communication. All right. Ben, anything more on that storm, or you want to go to the next one?
Let's go next one.
Okay.
I got a number of stories on this one, and I try to solve these now. The instance where a kid gets hurt, you don't know about it, and they go home with a different story. I'll give you one that's context. We had a marginal player on the lower half of the spectrum, probably never going to really be on the field for us, is doing a little bit of spring workout with us, inconsistent, shows up one day, jumps in a drill, kind of twinges his knee and walks it off. I don't know anything more about it. And the next day, my principal calls me in to find out that player tore his ACL. And why wouldn't I call home? Why didn't I address it with mom? Didn't know anything about it. That one turned into a heck of a storm. And it affected me in a way that I plan for all that stuff now, where I have some general rules around that. But maybe you also share one that's similar. Kid goes home and you're like, how did I not know about this? That can get really dicey.
Yeah. And guys, if you have a trainer, then you must make sure the trainer is contacting the parents. If you have a kid who twinges and needs whatever, does the trainer's involved, the trainer has to shoot a text or something of saying, I saw Henry today, and If it's serious at all, hey, let me know or something. But your trainer's got to be a conduit for you on that. I think because that's a big deal. Parents shouldn't get a kid who's hurt themselves and no one from the school knows or contacted them or anything. Anybody have something else on that that can help a coach with this storm? Okay, it goes back to the parent meeting too, though, guys. In the parent meeting, you got to say, it's up to your child, it's up to Henry to tell us before he leaves the locker room if he has any issue at all. So Henry can't leave the locker room with his knee kind of messed up or he doesn't feel quite right. And then at 9 p.m., y'all go to care now. That's not our fault. Henry's got to tell us before he leaves, Coach, my knee doesn't feel exactly right. So we can look at it and give him a little treatment, let you know. Like we can be involved. We're going to have a podcast on parent meetings. All right. Next storm, Ben.
Next storm, the parent group chat.
Deep here now. So you're talking about the coach you have sports you for your parents?
No, the one that I reference in this is the one that the parents build outside of your system. So we have a sports U, our parents join it. This is the one where the wide receiver parent is texting the quarterback's dad, and they start to build the fellowship of misery. And then you find out through whatever means that there's a parent group chat and it's growing.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a tough one. I got thoughts, of course. Anybody want to jump in and contribute on this one first?
Hey, Randy,
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot to say about the parent group chat, but I will tell you this. At the beginning of the year, I have a picture of a dinner table and a vehicle. It's on the screen. There's no words up there. And I tell the parents, I say, more athletic programs are killed in these two locations than any field house. So please be aware that whenever you're making conversation with your child in regards to our program or their coaches, you're putting your child in a position where they have to choose a side. Allow me to be a part of your child's success and your success, and let's work together. I think that an outside parent group chat, I mean, that all that's doing is man, that's just somebody pumping somebody else up, and that is nothing but a headache and a storm that's about to erupt that I don't think is going to be great for anybody.
My mentor told me one time, if you ever confront a parent, you got to do it nicely. If you know there's a group chat out there and there's one person in that group chat that's sane, you go to that person and say, hey, I'm hearing some things. Let's talk. Not I'm mad or anything like that, but let's talk. Usually that'll stop. When they get, oh gosh, coach knows, it embarrasses them. I never had a lot of that because we met with our team every day and talked about something other than football. Our parents knew that we had their best interests at heart and we were going to love on their kids and help raise them. And our parents didn't always agree with us, of course. And I'm sure I got cussed in the stands on 3rd and 12 all the time, but they did know that we weren't just about football. If you're just about football, I think those group chats will happen more. All right, coach, quick break. As you know, I love celebrating achievement and tracking and rewarding players for doing good stuff because if you reward them, they're going to do it more. Most coaches say culture matters, but they don't have a system or a way to track it. And I get it. It's time consuming and labor intensive. This is why OVR was created. What you celebrate, you replicate. And every time you plus your athletes for bringing someone to work out, being enthusiastic, increasing a PR, every time their score goes up, they're going to want to repeat it the next day. Okay, we got something in the chat here. Would you call them, set up a meeting, or just in the public and talk to them? I call them. It can't be email for sure. and probably wouldn't call a meeting. I guess it just depended on how close we were. Like if it was a booster club president, that's a storm too. So I believe this your booster club president must be chosen by the head coach, and it's not a vote. And you got to tell your booster club this. The booster club president is like an assistant coach. And they're not a yes person or anything, but they're riding for the brand. And so if your booster club president is one of these people in the group chat, I think you might call a meeting. But if it's just somebody, your outside linebackers mom who's in the booster club, you think she's got some sense, then I think you just call them and say, "Hey Trish, I mean, we have a good relationship here, and I'm sort of hearing some things. Talk to me," because usually they have the wrong information. But man, when you call them, they get embarrassed. Like, "Oh my God, coach knows." Another side note, I used to send too many emails. It was easy. And I remember one of my bosses telling me, "Randy, you send too many emails. You need to get off your butt and go down the hallway and go talk to the volleyball coach. Don't send her an email." He was so right. My life got so much better. You can't solve much on an email. All right, next storm, Ben.
That was so good. I'm gonna steal that, Tristan. I'm gonna Google dinner table and vehicle when we're done here. I
Oh,
guarantee.
I was thinking about this, Tristan. Maybe add a cell phone to it. That was really good.
So good. Where I was going next with that was the booster that donated quite a few dollars to the program. But if you feel like we've already hit that one, we could jump.
Well, if it's Buddy Garrity, I love Buddy Garrity. Y'all know who that is? That was the booster on Friday Night Lights. But Google Buddy Garrity on YouTube or something, and he's the prototypical booster.
Randy mentioned that he didn't go through this, and I called it the tryout cut that goes wrong. Cutting a senior or cutting a junior or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but a tryout cut that goes wrong. For my entire high school head coaching career, I've never cut, but our program has gotten too big. We ended up last year with about 160 trying out, but we only have room for 125 jerseys and stuff like that. In the past few years, we did the jersey swap thing where we would keep 140 guys, and then on certain weeks, if you weren't eligible or this or that, you had to get your uniform back, and we hand it to a different kid, and that created its own storm. Mom's not understanding this or that. Are you cutting my kid? Is he kicked off? But the point of this one being the tryout cut that goes wrong, it's a communication issue. I had a senior that was pretty clear with me that he'd only play position X. When it came down to the last few guys, he was only willing to do X, no special teams, almost like an NFL roster. So we went with the guy that was more versatile. And then that one blew up. So not to identify anyone, we'll just keep it at that. But it was one that was quite challenging and took a lot of my time in August. I should be prepping. It's a parent meeting, and then it's a rebuttal back to the principal, and it's like I shouldn't have be doing that. It's made me rethink cuts and how we handle that. You've mentioned the roll sheet on the school. I didn't use the roll sheet this last year as much as I had in the past, and it cost me. I should have done that.
The roll sheet, I mean, cutting someone, guys, I mean, and I've never cut a kid, but I think if you're in that situation, you better have data. I think you just can't say I cut your kid because he wasn't good enough. I think you got to have some data. And I think that's hard, but your data could be how many summer workouts they made. I think when a kid tells me he's not playing special teams, that's all the data that I need. Like, I'll see you, because our culture would be terrible if we had guys who were telling us those kind of things. But we all know, I mean, these storms are coming. Anybody have anything you want to contribute to cutting a kid or something in that realm? All right, I got a storm that sort of relates to it. And this is a true story. A fast and wide coach. He's got a quarterback who's a stud. Then he's got a coach's kid who they just moved in, and the coach's kid is a quarterback. And he's not going to play. He's not the starter, but he's a pretty big kid. On the goal line, they made a goal line package for this big kid to go inside the 5. So they're doing a walkthrough before week 2, and they're in the indoor, and the starter is off to the side. They're on the red zone, and they got the goal line package, and the starter is way away from the team, sitting down, pouting. So the head coach walks over and says, "Jimmy, what's wrong?" He's like, "This ain't fair, coach. If I'm the quarterback and we get out inside the 5, I don't think it's fair he gets to go in." Damn. How do you handle it? And the floor is open.
The first thing I think about is that roll sheet. There's more to this game than just being a starter, understanding situations, down and distances, the pluses and minuses, putting different personnel on the field. This April, I've been kind of digging into it a little bit more to make sure that my team understands. I got a really big senior class coming back, and a lot of them play a lot of different roles, but they won't all be starting. There's just too many of them. So it's like, all right, I got a 12 personnel package, and you feel this need for us. That doesn't mean everything just comes back to clarity, establishing clarity with your kids, with your parents, your administration. There's a book by Lencioni that talks about the advantage, and it's all about organizational health through clarity. And that's it. It's fine. How do we build clarity with a kid? Understand just because you are a start, you put in a wildcat package, that means you're not on the field.
I know
That's
y'all. It didn't end well. The coach sort of scrapped it because the starter was pouting so much. I don't have the right answer. All I can say is you got to talk about these things every day. Every day. If you want to have a culture that eliminates some of your storms, you have to be willing to have an 8 to 10 minute team meeting a day. And you find things to talk about. I would show 6 clips from practice, and they would be effort clips. And hey, look, this guy could have taken a shot here but didn't. And there might be 1 or 2 teachable, but mostly they were high five clips. You have to celebrate the unselfish kids, make a big deal out of it. I don't know if this would have happened. A mom emailed the coach. They're worried about his stats. This was a 5'11 quarterback, but they don't know. Maybe he's going to be the next Drew Brees. What do y'all think about this? What if you told the starter, hey, look, every college coach wants an unselfish kid, and it's rare now. If a college coach sees you, if that big kid scores a touchdown and he's jogging off the field and you meet him at the hash, high fiving him, and y'all have some special celebration where he's jumping up and y'all are hip bumping and stuff, that would mean more for you to get a scholarship than you running quarterback power from the 2. Do I have a shot there to tell it? Would that help me at all? Matter, you're a young guy. Tell me.
I think you could show them. I think it's Mood the softball, Alabama softball,
Yeah, the
where
Mudita.
she's
Yeah.
going crazy. I think you could show that, and I 100% agree, especially with the quarterback position. I think that's what you should be able to do because I think it should tie back to your core values, what you preach every day. Also, what about the offensive linemen? They get no glory, and you get all the glory, even when you don't do anything.
Yeah.
But I think you have to have a good relationship with that kid as well. And I think you have to have a great relationship with the quarterback because I've had issues in the past because I probably didn't have a good enough relationship with them.
The biggest thing from that story is just know when you want to sit in the big chair, there's going to be some storms. That one probably needs to go in our field manual, Ben, but we'll have to talk about what the answer is. But I would have a hard time letting that 5'11 starter tell me I couldn't play because the coach's kid was a 230-pound kid who would have been a good 2-yard quarterback. And yeah, the big chair, there's some tough stuff in there. All right, Ben, next storm.
Staff member that starts to veer off track, whether that's where I've faced some storms as a staff member that checks out, not real happy. Maybe it could be a myriad of things that makes them check out. A staff member that believes in a different technique. I can think of one where we were kind of a slant defense And being a slant defense, that backside D end had to wrong arm and get underneath. And this particular coach played Division I football at a big school, and they were just big D ends that could just take on anybody and hold the edge. And I was a D coordinator at the time, and unbeknownst to me, when I would, because I'm doing linebacker DB stuff, I could look over there and we weren't practicing what was our scheme. And then going to the head coach and talking with this individual, hell bent on it's the right way to do it, because that's how I did it as a D1 athlete. A lot of these are pretty easy, but the hard part is the amount of time it takes where you're dealing with issues that you're in an argument for 30, 40 minutes when you should already be out the door and clean the locker room and moved on.
I think that comes back to y'all remember my story about, do you have anybody that's a defensive coordinator? And this was Joe McBride was the head coach, Coppell High School. And he said, yeah, they all could be, but they spent a lot of time on making sure everyone knew the scheme. And so I would think something like this would have to be, here's how I would have that meeting. All right, guys, let's look at our 3-4. We're going to go through it. If someone has something better, if you have some stunt that we don't know about, tell us. But if it's whatever we put in this little book, we're coaching next fall. We're making our manual right now. And I want everybody's opinion. But when this manual gets typed, the speak now or forever hold your peace type thing. But again, that takes some time. All right, so back to Ben's. I think this is fascinating topic of the coach who doesn't buy in. And I used to sit in meetings, and here's what I tell my staff. Here's what a great assistant is. We're going to argue how we're going to play the down block in here. Everybody has an opinion. But when we walk out this door, you should believe in whatever we agree to. You should convince your unit group that it was your idea. That's a great assistant. Whether you don't like it or not, you should go to your position room and say, guys, wait till I tell you this. Now, will that they all do that? No, but it puts that seed in their head of, oh, one of my jobs is to be loyal about how we're playing something. Ben, what did you do? What did you do with this guy who was the D1 guy? What was your solution?
This was kind of a 3-strike deal. We talked to him about it, got agreement, and then next week it continued. And then we went back and I said, well, gosh, I thought I was clear, this clarity thing. We went back and forth. You could tell that he didn't believe in it.
Now, what's he
And
coaching? He's coaching D-line or something?
the ends,
Okay.
just the ends of the time. And we ended up releasing him, just saying, hey, it's not going to work. I had another one as a head coach where the guy knew technique really well, but he was just 100% convinced that he had to build tough kids. And his way of doing that was doing monkey rolls and bear crawls. And I was like, hey, that's just, if we're doing monkey rolls and bear crawls as a D line, we're going to lose anyway. So I know you want to get them tougher, but work on these 3 techniques. We're big on 3. You got to be able to take on the down block, you got to be able to take the reach block, and you got to be able to pass rush, whatever. And
yeah, please, if they can shove and close, just shove and close. Yes.
that's it.
I'm sorry,
And
I have to say that I'm in Germany and all those coaches are from Germany, and American football is not a big deal, but I remember looking down on the other half of the field and the D line, they were doing speed ladder stuff. Oh,
yeah.
Go ahead, coach.
Looking back, I think we second guess ourselves because I know that we were overly clear about what we call our big 3 and how we're going to teach it and how the language has to be the same from 12 to grade 9. And just some guys just don't buy in. We let him go too. It was like week 2. I guess I get all tied up with my time. Like I don't have time to. And so that's kind of what spawned some of this as well. That says, okay, what do I do in April to make sure I don't have that problem with the D-line coach? I can't do it. If it's August, it's obviously that my system was broke early on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a one.
We've been going about an hour. I want to make sure that this is the most practical podcast anyone can listen to. Let's talk about this. The number one way you can avoid storms, storms are going to happen. The number one way you can lessen them is communication. You must have. If you have a parent email, that's no good. It's your job to get their emails. About 7 or 8 years ago, I figured out how to do a sports U or a chat group where it's their job to get into the sports U. And you got to communicate with them every day. You have to be a great parent meetings. Anyway, what's your prescription for a young coach listening to this? How do you avoid the storms?
I think you got to be as detailed as possible. There's a lot of things that go in my coach's notebook now because of a storm, just like Ben had talked about earlier. After we won in the semifinals to go to the state championship, I'm giving interviews on the field with the TV, and our coaches are cleaning up the sideline. And there was like one coach in the locker room, and our kids are celebrating. And a guy comes in there with a camera, and they just start calling out the team they're playing. Sure. We want to play so and so, and it went all viral. And my superintendent wants to know how that guy got in our locker room. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm talking to channel so and so, and my coaches are cleaning up the field. We're on the road. My coaches are packing up and stuff. I had guys assigned now at home and away to stand outside the locker room.
It's good.
If you're not part of T.O. you're not getting in. Parents are all, it doesn't matter. So I learned the hard way that way. So
this will be part of the head coaches academy, but you got to have documentation. In our coaches meeting in July, we're going to talk about what to do if there's a fight in the middle of the field. So every coach is going to go to the top of the numbers, turn around to our sideline and hold their hands out, and they're going to keep everybody back. That's every assistant coach except the head coach and both coordinators are going to the middle of the field, and we're going to stop. We're going to get our kids. But the other assistants, they have a job at the top of the numbers. That is on paper. I think it will happen, y'all. I mean, I guess it happened once or twice. But bottom line is, if it does happen, and let's say we don't get it done and there's a big fight, at least I can tell my superintendent we have a plan. I think if you want to avoid storms, the storm of this is the fight, and the after storm is you and the superintendent. So have some things on paper that show you have your act together and that you have systems. In another way that you can avoid storms is to understand parents never have your best interest at heart. They always have their kids' best interest. Don't fall for it. You cannot be big time friends with your parents. You better keep them at arm's length. Now, you might have one or two, but I'm going to tell you this one. This is a great storm. Baseball team, state tournament. They're in a hotel room. Dad calls the coach, says, Coach, we're going to win tomorrow. I got you a little present outside. I'll see you at the field tomorrow. So, coach opens the door to his hotel room, and there's a bag out there, and he picks it up and brings it into his hotel room. According to the coach, he didn't look inside the bag. Well, inside the bag was a 6-pack of Heineken. Now, the next day, please understand, every meeting you have with a parent is recorded. They're going to record everything. The next day, the dad's kid did not play in the state championship game. What do you think he did? Turned the coach in for drinking.
Drinking on the job.
And the coach swears he didn't drink one. The damage is done. He should have looked in the bag, never brought it in. So for you to avoid storms, be the best communicator in the state. Send something to your parents every day. Take pictures of your team meetings where you're talking about character. We used to have Real Man Mondays, and we'd show kids how to tie ties. It's hard to have a group chat talking about how bad Coach Jackson is when he taught my kid how to tie a tie. But if you don't send it to them, they might not go home and tell them that he learned how to tie a tie. Kids don't talk to their parents. So always communicate. Good stuff, man. Be the voice. Have forms and documents. and we'll help you with the head coach academy. And then understand the parent is not on your side. If you coach 30 years and you get to coach 5 parents who would rather win state than their kids start, it's a miracle. Most of them they can't help it. Ben, you're really smart on this stuff. How to give us something that you would say would help a young coach avoid a storm?
I think it's exposures to the storms early from the guys that have already done it. Jason, your story makes me think, oh God, how many times did I not guard the door at the locker room? And how that can just turn so ugly so fast in such an innocent way. In my handbook, I better have something that says, okay, I need 2 guys to go guard that door because it's really getting exposure to the older guys. This discussion's not over. I want to carry it on school and carry that even a little bit deeper. And every time going into my 32nd year, I'm not ashamed to say, but there's part of me that's like, dang, why didn't I think about what Jason's already went through? That's something I better have in the book. Every one of those guys in Fast and Wide and everything else, I'm sure if everyone contributed one of their stories, it would probably make us all much
Yeah.
more effective. It saves somebody's job at some
Yeah.
point. Because in today's day and age with the recording and the sensitivities to everything, I have a good friend who went through a really tough situation that probably cost him his coaching career. And I wrote down CYA1AA. And I put a hashtag right there that says CYA because you're one accusation away. Doesn't even matter if it's true.
Yep.
It's just an accusation that can ruin it. I talk to my staff all the time about be extremely careful. What you think is careful is probably not enough. I think getting exposure and it going through this has been good for me because I think I'll role play some of this with my coaches and just because we've had a few here where we present it and it's silence because you're kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't
Yeah.
know what I'd do.
I know. Some of them are
So
really hard, but I can tell you this, I don't want this podcast to end without us saying, if there's not someone in the locker room, then you better just marry an attorney because something's going to happen in that locker room. Assign coaches to that locker room. That was in my handbook. My superintendent, if he ever wanted to look, he would know which day defensive coaches were in the locker rooms monitoring on Monday, and offensive coaches were picking up the field. On Tuesday, it was vice versa. But I had coaches assigned to the locker room because you put more than one 16-year-old kid in a room by themselves, and bad decisions are going to happen. So make sure you're monitoring locker rooms. What's a storm that you wish you knew your first year as a head coach that you know now how to handle? Or what's the worst storm you ever had? I really think it'd be a great book. And maybe it should be. It'd probably be an easy book. All we do is compile them and then put it on Amazon. But man, this has been great. I'm trying to think of a fun storm to finish this with, but it's hard to think of a fun one. But Ben, appreciate you so much, man.
I'll give you a fun one.
Okay.
Now, this is one that turned right. I had 2 managers that were really good, and they started a kind of this impromptu, I'm going to question you on the field Instagram channel.
Hmm.
So they'll go up to a player and say, what do you think of the weather today? Kids are going to say, it's raining, it's perfect football weather, whatever. Well, they gained a following. I found out about it long after it already had got some momentum. And there's other teams that are chiming in, and it's kind of actually more fun than it is. It's not derogatory. And I thought, oh my gosh, I never addressed my managers talking to my players on the field. They just did it out of fun. And it turned in, they kind of have their own little following now, but it was good. But how
Yes.
bad it could have been.
Well,
You have one kid say the wrong thing, and
well,
then it's viral.
so what do y'all do then? These storms just, you can't stop. What do you do with the kid who posts something on social media negative about an opponent? I don't know if I ever dealt with that, but what happens?
That was a tough one. I used to have a policy. I tell my kids I want nothing posted because kids would post their highlights and then people would come watch our highlights and see certain plays we're running.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't give
Yeah.
them anything. But now there's so much stuff out there that I've kind of relaxed on that, but I state it deliberately. I think we need to really build principle based. When you say, hey, don't do anything that hurts the team, because I can't spell out every single little thing, but it's that kind of the Lou Holtz thing that says you're not going to do anything that would hurt the team. All
Yeah.
right, then that
But
covers a lot of ground.
I think social media needs to be in our head coaches academy. Social media better be part of your stuff that you talk to your team about. We can't have a bunch of rules, but man, social media is Pandora's box. I can't believe more bad things don't happen. Maybe I just don't know about it, but I never experienced it. A team we were playing one time, some kids on the other team said they were going to kill one of our players. And they were really good players who didn't get to play. I was proud of that. Jason's thing about the locker room, I thought I'd heard most of the storms. I'd never heard that one. To close this out, if you want to do the best you can when August hits, not to have to deal with things, attack it. You should have a parent meeting before school is out and talk about the summer. And then you should have a parent meeting in August. But you should communicate with your parents all the time. Football season should never end. I went and did an audit with a school not too far from here, and I told them, you guys got to communicate with the parents more. Football season should never end. They should get pictures of their kids in the weight room, track meets. Anytime a kid is participating, they ought to get pictures of it in your sports year or whatever you use. The more you communicate like that, I think the better it's going to help you on storms. I'll just say this real fast, but one time I got mad at my team and we were playing somebody not very good 2 hours before the game. No one was in the stands, and we walked the field and we broke it out with a curse word. And I didn't hear it. One of my assistants told me about it. And I bear crawled the whole team right then. I was mad. I was going to make a point. We were playing somebody we were going to beat by 60. And after about 3 trips, a kid walks, shows his coach, my hands are bleeding. And there was glass or something. This was one of those inner city fields in Fort Worth. A lot of kids' hands were messed up. He told me. I was proud I was disciplining them, but the parents weren't proud. You can't injure a kid disciplining them. I sent an email the next day apologizing, saying, I know I can't injure your child, and this is what happened because football season never ends. And I was sending pictures all the time, and they knew we did team meetings. I got out of it. They gave me the benefit of the doubt. If football season never ends and they know you love their kid, then they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt on some of these storms because you can't avoid them all. But boy, you can, like Nick Saban says, the definition of toughness is how the miles per hour it can take. You can put in better storm windows in your house if football season never ends, and they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. So be looking for the Head Coaches Academy. Ben is doing most of the work on it because he's the brains behind this operation. And but I've got some good stories. So Jason, Coach Metter, thanks for joining us, buddy. And Ben, I'll talk to you tomorrow, brother. And I think Jason's going to join us too. So thank you, everyone, for Arena Podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Ben.
Man.
Appreciate you, buddy. Great job, man.